As Republicans near the passage of a major tax bill, one thing has changed for many in the party: the focus on deficit and debt. We don't have an assessment yet of the cost of the latest bill, but a congressional scorekeeper found the Senate version was expected to add $1 trillion to the debt. Many Republican leaders say the tax cuts will help pay for themselves. Maya McGuinness has long been a leading voice over concerns about the debt, the deficit, and spending. She's the president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Maya McGuinness, welcome back to the program. So what is right now your main concern about this bill?
Well, my main concern is clearly that this is going to add hundreds of billions, in fact, $1 trillion or more, to the national debt over the next 10 years. And that comes at a time when we can ill afford it. Just to kind of take a step back, the debt right now relative to the economy is the highest it has been since World War II. And what we should be doing is putting together a plan to bring that debt down, not something that's going to add $1 trillion or more to the debt. And also, I would add that I think it's a tremendous lost opportunity to have done some real tax reform, whereas this bill ended up being very expensive, I would say unaffordable, tax cuts instead of real reform.
Is there one change they could have made that would have alleviated your concern about the deficit and the debt, or is this just something that is sprinkled throughout this entire piece of legislation?
No, absolutely. The overall structure of the tax framework could have been incredibly sensible and really helped to promote growth, which is the purpose of tax reform. But the key to doing that was broadening the tax base. We have over $1.5 trillion in tax breaks every year. Those are the deductions and credits and exclusions that make the tax code so complicated. And the point was, if you get rid of a lot of those, you then have the money to bring down rates. That will help generate growth, and you will not add to the debt. But unfortunately, in this bill, they really haven't been willing to tackle very many of those tax breaks at all. And as a result, it's going to be incredibly expensive. And the biggest way that we're paying for it, instead of getting rid of tax breaks, is from borrowing.
But I'm sure you know Republican leaders, most of them are saying, no, this is going to generate growth. And from that growth, the government is going to generate revenue that is going to help ease off and reduce the debt and the deficit.
So tax reform will promote growth, and the more that you do the smart kinds of tax reforms, and there are many that are included in this bill, the more growth you will get. But you will not get anything close to enough growth to actually pay for itself. So it will grow the economy, but it will still lose a good amount of revenue because it won't pay for itself. And by pretty generous estimates, even after growth, it's going to add $1 trillion to the debt. So those lawmakers at this point are basically suspending reality and saying, OK, I'm going to also cross my fingers and hope that it will grow more than any independent forecaster is projecting. And that's really not likely. And again, when the debt is as high as it is, this is not the time to be gambling with our really sort of precarious fiscal situation. Instead, we should have put together a plan that didn't add to the debt.
What about, Maya McGuinness, the argument that some conservatives are making in that if this bill means that there is less of a government burden at the federal, state, and local level on individual families, on small business owners, for example, that's a good thing, that is enough of a good thing that it should offset any concern about the deficit?
Well, there are different kinds of stimulus that you want to do to the economy to help the economy. So if the goal is you want to create economic growth, right now we should be doing things that will help investment. Investing more is what would grow the economy when you are where we are in the business cycle right now, which is the economy's already doing pretty well. If we were in a recession or a downturn, we would think about different kind of stimulus and maybe encouraging spending would be better for the economy. But right now, we should be focusing on investment to help generate growth. The other argument for this is that you want to give people tax relief. You want to cut their taxes. That's great. Who doesn't want a tax cut? I think we all do. But if you have already built up big deficits like we have, you can't afford a tax cut unless you also cut spending. And one thing to remember is that the Republican budget that was passed this year didn't cut a penny out of spending. It didn't do anything on the spending side, so it maintains the huge deficits that we already have. And that tax cut, again, goes on the national credit card. That actually slows economic growth.
Well, speaking of spending, as you know, the Congress is just days away from either passing or delaying for another few weeks the passage of a spending bill. Could that then be an opportunity in that legislation to cut spending to address the deficit and the debt concern?
I'm afraid what it is it's going to be exactly the opposite, where in some ways this tax bill and no longer caring about paying for things is kind of the dam breaking on fiscal responsibility. And so what we're likely to see in the coming week is not only the passage of this big tax cut, but also increases in the sequester spending, so increases in domestic discretionary defense spending. Looks like they're going to actually pass another tax cut. I don't think people saw that coming, but there's a tax extenders bill that could be quite costly, and they may be delaying some other tax cuts that are part of Obamacare. So actually what we could see next week on top of this tax plan is another couple of $100 billion in borrowing. So it really seems like there's just no fiscal constraint right now that's governing what we're doing in Congress, and one big tax cut may in fact lead to some more spending increases that nobody's willing to pay for.
Red ink in every direction you look.
I'm afraid so, and at a time we really should be doing quite the opposite.
Maya McGinnis with the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya.